Former U.S. President Trump and former Secretary of State Pompeo respond to a recent Biden comment on China. Pompeo said the new president's language echoes Chinese propaganda. A Chinese media mouthpiece reports on counterfeit vaccine doses, but experts say Chinese authorities may have an ulterior motive for publicizing the issue. A leaked document suggests Beijing officials knew the CCP virus was contagious close to a month before warning the public. They reportedly discussed measures to stop the spread in advance. And two Baltic countries take a hard line toward China. Estonia warns against a world silenced by Beijing, while Lithuania bans a Chinese company's equipment from scanning its airports. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Former President Donald Trump is expressing dismay over the Biden administration's policies towards the Chinese regime. He also points to the Biden family's business ties with the regimes. NTD's Penny Zhou reports.
In an interview with Newsmax, former President Donald Trump suggested he is not happy with the Biden administration's stance towards the Chinese regime.
Well, his family is involved with the Chinese certainly a long time and a lot of money. The whole thing is so ridiculous. We had China exactly where we wanted them.
Trump might be referring to President Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Hunter's business dealings with the Chinese regime are now under federal investigation.
With the election now over, with Biden now elected president, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware informed the agents who've been working on this case that they were free to take more active steps. And that is
Hunter also holds a stake in a Chinese private equity firm. Other partners of the firm include major Chinese companies owned by the Chinese Communist Party or CCP. President Biden once promised during his campaign that if elected, no one in his family will have business ties with foreign companies or governments.
No one in my family will have an office in the White House, will sit in meetings as if they're a cabinet member, will in fact have any business relationship with anyone that relates to a foreign corporation or a foreign country. Period. End of story.
But the White House said earlier this month that Hunter Biden is still working to unwind his investment.
Just recently, there were reports that the president's son still owns a 10% stake in a Chinese investment firm formed with state-owned entities. Do you have an update on the divestment from that investment?
He has been working to unwind his investment, but I would certainly point you, he's a private citizen, I would point you to him or his lawyers on the outside on any update.
Penny Zhou, NTD News.
President Biden is facing criticism over his remarks about the Chinese regime human rights record. On Tuesday, Biden talked about his recent call with CCP leader Xi Jinping and explained his reasoning behind the authoritarian policies.
The central principle of Xi Jinping is that there must be a united, tightly controlled China. And he uses his rationale for the things he does based on that.
Biden says Chinese leaders believe if the country is not unified at home, it will be victimized by the outer world. This argument, however, has been widely used by the CCP to justify its crackdown on dissidents and minorities. Biden then went on to say he pointed out to Xi that he is obliged as the American president to speak out on human rights.
And by the he said he gets it. Culturally, there are different norms that each country and their leaders are expected to follow.
In an interview with Fox Business, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo responded to the remarks.
That language, that it's just a set of different norms, that's the Chinese propaganda line. They want you to think that this is just a quiet nation. They have a little bit of different system, but goodness gracious, what's all the fuss about? Maybe Xi Jinping gets the fact that now this administration is only going to talk about this and raise it, quote, because I have to talk about this, rather than take action. We did more than that. We declared it genocide. We sanctioned some of the people who were responsible for it. Pompeo
says he is concerned about the comments and hopes the Biden administration won't treat communist China as a nation with slightly different norms. Nearly 24 reports of fake CCP virus vaccines have recently come out of China. Some of the counterfeit doses even made their way overseas. But some experts say the reports may come with an ulterior motive. NTD's Chen Han has more.
A new report from China's media mouthpiece has caught the public eye. Xinhua news agency says more than 20 cases of fake vaccine doses have been uncovered. Some were even exported to other countries. But experts say there's a lot more to the story than just vaccine fraud. They suspect Beijing may use these reports to set a precedent and skirt responsibility. That way, if vaccines and other drugs made in China are found to cause problems, authorities can simply blame the issues on counterfeit vaccines, instead of admitting they produce faulty products. The report said 70 people were involved in the 21 cases. The fake doses combined normal saline solution and mineral water to create the appearance of a real vaccine. Every country is required to test foreign vaccines before they can be imported. Because of that, U.S.-based China affairs analyst Zhang Jian believes Chinese officials must have worked with fake vaccine producers to produce the doses.
Without the protection and support of Chinese officials, no Chinese company would dare to send vaccines abroad.
Canada-based Dr. Zhao Zhongyuan says he's certain fake vaccines are circulating in China. He explains he has doubts they've been exported. Instead, he claims the Xinhua news reports are a trick cooked up by regime authorities.
I think it's because its own vaccines are not up to par, and the CCP spreads the news that there are fake vaccines both domestically and abroad. So in the future, if there is a problem in other countries with Chinese vaccines, the CCP can say that some fake vaccines are mixed into our regular channels. Then they can find an excuse.
It's not the first time vaccine problems have plagued China. 10 years ago, faulty doses caused disabilities and even death in children. Parents who spoke up about them have been silenced by authorities. Chen Han, NTD News.
A deal for Taiwan to buy 5 million doses of the CCP virus vaccine from Germany is now on hold. Taiwanese Health Minister Chen Shizhong cites potential pressure from Beijing. Chen says Taiwanese officials were on the verge of announcing the deal in December when German company BioNTech pulled the plug. Chen does not blame Beijing directly, but implies there was a political dimension to the decision. He adds, quote, certain people don't want Taiwan to be too happy. The CCP claims Taiwan as its own territory and rejects Taiwan's right to speak for itself on the international stage. BioNTech signed a deal with a Shanghai-based Chinese pharmaceutical firm to exclusively develop and commercialize vaccine products in Communist China, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. In return, the Chinese company agreed to pay up to $85 million in licensing fees and invest $50 million for a stake in the German firm. The nation of Senegal in West Africa received its first delivery of CCP virus vaccines from China on Wednesday. The 200,000 doses from China's Sinopharm are enough to vaccinate 100,000 people. As a lower middle-income country, Senegal is eligible for around 1.3 million doses of free vaccine from a World Health Organization or WHO program. But shipments are not expected to start until late February. That's why Senegal turned to Communist China as it awaits disbursements from the WHO. Last week, Senegal says it has paid about $4 million for Chinese-made vaccines. The country has so far recorded about 800 deaths from the CCP virus. A number of Chinese provinces report 0 new virus cases for multiple days in a row. But locals say the claims don't quite add up. NTD's Luoya has more.
During the Lunar New Year holiday, authorities in some Chinese provinces claimed they have 0 new cases of the CCP virus. Residents there were expecting the lifting of lockdown measures, but videos from Chinese internet users show that authorities in some places are still implementing strict lockdown measures. This is why some people are questioning the authenticity of the 0 cases narrative. A video from February 14th appears to show that a neighborhood in the northeastern city of Harbin is still under lockdown. The person who shot the video says the guards were catching people breaking lockdown rules again. She adds that the measures are still very strict now and authorities are checking every single car. Over the weekend, some people were seen taken away for allegedly breaking lockdown rules. The northeastern province of Heilongjiang held a training course for quarantine personnel recently. It was reportedly revealed at the training that the outbreak this time is exceptionally serious.
From what we know so far, this wave of the pandemic is highly contagious. Many people with close contacts or semi-close contacts to CCP virus patients have also tested positive. This requires us to act in accordance to the basic protocols when dealing with CCP virus patients in quarantine so that we can prevent internal cross-infection.
In the northern Chinese city of Shijiazhuang, authorities reported 0 new cases for the past week. But Chinese author Jiang Fuzhen believes this is politically motivated.
Days ago, the outbreak in Shijiazhuang was so serious, and all of a sudden it cleared to zero. I think it is fake. The outbreak in China is not likely to ease immediately. If it eases, it is due to political demand. It's usually due to requirements from authorities.
In the northern province of Shandong, very few confirmed cases are reported officially, but villagers there are reportedly asked not to visit each other, and people from outside the village are reportedly not allowed to enter. Reporting by Luoya, NTD News.
New information about Beijing's cover-up of the pandemic. Chinese authorities reportedly held meetings focused on measures to prevent virus spread, weeks before officials admitted human-to-human transmission was possible. That's according to a document obtained by NTD's sister media, The Epoch Times. On January 20th, 2020, a Chinese expert admitted the CCP or Chinese Communist Party virus can be passed human-to-human. But 3 weeks before the admission, authorities in China's Guangxi Autonomous Region held a meeting to discuss virus prevention methods, suggesting they already knew the infection was contagious. The document details a speech given at the meeting by one of the regime's top health authorities. They later held a second meeting and established a leading group for pandemic prevention and control. The document also shows Communist Party head Xi Jinping and Premier Minister Li Keqiang issued instructions for virus prevention. That was at least a week before the CCP admitted human-to-human transmission. A milestone anniversary for the Chinese Communist Party is approaching. Planning for the event is already in full swing in Tianjin City, next door to Beijing. July 1st, 2021 marks the 100-year anniversary of the founding of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. Beijing is pushing for a high-profile, widely publicized celebration. Ahead of the event's official launch, Tianjin city officials have ordered all Communist Party members to watch a TV series about the Korean War in the 50s. The program echoes the Chinese regime's narrative about the war, namely that the Chinese army helped North Korea to resist U.S. aggression from 1950 to 1953. Chinese publications with the regime's version of the events are often considered anti-American. Internationally, it's widely thought that the communist bloc supported North Korea in the invasion of South Korea and that the United Nations sent soldiers to aid South Korea. The U.S. was designated the leader of the Unified Command, and many soldiers there also came from the U.S. Tianjin city authorities said the TV series would help party members better understand China's history and CCP head Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism in the new era. China affairs commentator Ji Feng told Radio Free Asia, whenever there is a problem with China-U.S. relations, the CCP will clearly show its position, but adds that it's only putting on a show for Chinese people, not for the U.S. U.S. Homeland Security is finding millions of fake masks from China. They say they provide no protection at all.
That includes a seizure earlier today with Special Agents of Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI as it is commonly known, of seizing more than 1 million counterfeit masks as part of an ongoing investigation into a criminal enterprise distributing counterfeit masks throughout the United States.
A CBS report says investigations reveal China is the source of the fakes. They are made to look like authentic 3M products. But the phony masks are not tested for N95 compliance and could put frontline medical workers at risk. They were sold to hospitals, medical facilities, and government agencies in at least 5 states. Investigators notified about 6,000 potential victims who could have purchased the knockoffs. Officials encourage medical workers and companies to go to 3M's website for tips on how to spot fakes. It appears U.S. President Joe Biden will be lenient towards Beijing, at least about its presence in U.S. schools. He recently did away with a policy relating to China's Confucius institutes. NTD's Don Ma has the story.
U.S. President Joe Biden hinted he may be lenient towards Communist China's presence in the United States. Reports from last Tuesday show Biden quietly removed a proposed Trump-era policy aimed at protecting American academia from Beijing's influence. It would have required American schools to reveal partnerships with Beijing's Confucius institutes. Without it, American schools could potentially form secret partnerships with the Chinese regime. Beijing describes the institutes as an opportunity to exchange the Chinese language and culture with students overseas. But the program has been widely criticized for spreading communist ideology abroad. Biden withdrew the policy a month ago, but the move was only disclosed by the U.S. General Service Administration last week. It's a concerning move. The Trump administration had previously labeled the Confucius Institutes as Chinese propaganda outlets. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said the institutes advance Beijing's propaganda and malign influence on U.S. campuses. Senior research fellow Rachel Peterson works with the National Association of Scholars, a U.S.-based nonprofit advocating for academic and intellectual freedom. She tells us that the institutes are teaching students a Chinese Communist Party-sanctioned version of China.
You'll see a version of Chinese culture that is heavily supportive of the Chinese regime, whitewashed of minorities, such as the Uyghurs or Falun Gong practitioners, a version that leaves out aggressions towards Tibet, that presents Taiwan as an undisputed territory of China, that entirely avoids the Tiananmen Square massacre. They have no place on American college campuses, and it's time for them to close.
With the policy gone, it's now that much easier for Beijing to infiltrate U.S. schools. Peterson has seen this from the institutes firsthand.
Confucius Institutes are a way for the Chinese government to spy on American professors, many of whom have told me they are uncomfortable and feel like their own university administration is watching them and reporting their moves back to China. They are a tool of surveillance for Chinese students who are studying in the U.S. And who are being monitored and reported on back in China. And they also serve as a way to pressure the administrators and encourage them to be more friendly towards the Chinese regime. Colleges and universities have a moral duty to let the public know when they are accepting money from the Chinese government and engaging in these close partnerships. Transparency.
Biden's decision has been heavily criticized by politicians. Top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McCall, said, quote, "The Biden administration is sending a concerning signal about its scrutiny of CCP influence in academia and telling academic institutions that they don't need to be transparent about their ties to China's regime." Pennsylvania Representative John Joyce wrote on Twitter that Biden's decision endorses Beijing's propaganda. He wrote, "Rather than encourage propaganda, the Biden administration should stand with the American people against the CCP." Peterson seems to agree with the politician's criticism.
President Biden has sent a major signal, a signal to the Chinese government that signals more openness and welcoming towards Confucius Institutes, a signal towards colleges and universities that they are free to engage in these kind of partnerships with the Chinese government, and a signal to American professors and students that he does not have their back, that he will not protect them against the incursion of Chinese propaganda in their schools. So it's quite shocking and extremely disappointing to see President Biden fail to protect the American education system, fail to protect the professors and students here in the U.S.
U.S. Senate investigators found in 2019 that Beijing gave nearly $160 million to U.S. schools to fund the Confucius Institutes. According to the National Association of Scholars, there are a total of 75 Confucius Institutes in the United States as of June last year, while 45 of them have closed or are in the process of closing. Don Ma, NTD News.
Estonia is warning other democratic countries to keep a close eye on China. In its annual report, the Estonian Foreign Intelligence Service stated, quote, "China's leadership understands that the United West is an insurmountable obstacle for China that must be broken." It added that implementing China's foreign policy rules or creating a community of common destiny will lead to a silenced world dominated by Beijing. The term Community of Common Destiny was created by the Chinese Communist Party to promote and describe its global ambitions. The Chinese embassy in Estonia has reportedly sought to prevent the report from being published, but its efforts failed. The report comes after Estonia and 5 other European countries sent lower-ranking ministers, rather than presidents or prime ministers, to a summit meeting called by Beijing. Another Baltic country, Lithuania, banned a Chinese company on Wednesday from supplying baggage scanning equipment for its airports. It cites national security concerns. The company is a subsidiary of China's Nuctech. Its screening gears can be seen at border crossings and airports across Europe. Last year, the U.S. sought to persuade European countries to avoid products from Nuctech. Lithuania's intelligence services considers the company a threat to national security. 5,000 Hong Kongers have applied for U.S. visas within just 2 weeks. The document gives them a potential path to citizenship. NTD's Elle Rhodes has more.
The Times reported applications are flying in for a BNO visa since the scheme opened at the end of January. That's almost 5,000 applications in a fortnight. The visa would give Hong Kongers a 5-year permission to live, work and study in the UK and a route to citizenship. The UK government changed its visa rules after Beijing imposed a so-called national security law on the region last summer, this leading to a crackdown on the opposition. About half of the applications come from Hong Kongers already in the UK who were granted temporary settlement after fleeing from the territory. Experts say at this rate of demand there could be as many as 150,000 applications by the end of the year. The government has not set a limit on the number. 350,000 Hong Kongers hold a BNO or British National Overseas Passport. Elle Rhodes, NTD News.
A few North Koreans are now the world's leading bank robbers. But they're not stealing stacks of cash. They're stealing wallets full of cryptocurrency. The DOJ is charging 3 programmers for trying to steal more than $1.3 billion. Here are the details.
Right now, you're looking at 27-year-old Kim Il, one of the people allegedly conspiring to commit some of the most detrimental cyber attacks in history. He, along with John Chang-hyuk, are allegedly members of a North Korean intel agency engaged in criminal hacking. Hyuk speaks English, Korean, and Mandarin Chinese. The charging documents claim other countries like China and Russia allowed these hackers to operate within their borders to do the North Korean regime's bidding. Here's 36-year-old Park Jin-hyuk, who the FBI wants for conspiracy to commit bank fraud and computer intrusion. All these hackers are wanted for allegedly stealing over $1.3 billion in money and cryptocurrency from financial institutions and companies. But that's not all. Here's the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, John Demers, on how the North Korean regime has become adept at stealing money from institutions around the world.
It also describes in stark detail how the DPRK cyber threat has followed the money and turned its revenue generation sights on the most cutting-edge aspects of international finance, including through the theft of cryptocurrency from exchanges and other financial institutions. In some cases, through the creation and deployment of cryptocurrency applications with hidden backdoors.
The indictment alleges the hackers engaged in a host of cyber attacks for revenge or financial gain against the following entities.
You want us to kill the leader of North Korea?
Yes. For one, they came after Sony Entertainment in 2014 for the movie The Interview that depicted a fictional assassination of North Korea's leader. And they also used an email phishing campaign between 2016 and 2020 that targeted employees of U.S. defense contractors, energy, aerospace, and technology companies. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow. Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.